Okay, little story behind the Apollo XL. If you've been following along and you remember when I introduced this bike, the bottom bracket was loose, cables were broken, and there were just loose nuts and bolts all over the place on the bike, to be absolutely honest. He said he had loosened the steering for me to be able to get it in my car, which was nice, so fair enough. It is what it is. It was only a cheap bike. That's fair enough. So I've nipped up the preload on the headstock. It's one of those old school quill stems. So I've nipped up the preload and tightened the lock ring to specified torque, tightened the quill to specified torque. Just adjusted the brakes and these retro Shimano shifters into a nicer position, because they were like up there, like pointing towards the sky for some reason. So adjusted them. 4 new cables and new cable housings all round on the bike. Front derailleur set up, new cable. Rear derailleur set up, index serviced, new cable. Lube on the chain, new brake cables, brakes set up as good as I could get them. I did mention that these were like cheapo ones, about as good as I can get them, to be honest, on a cheap bike. They're not the best. You know, if I was maybe keeping this, I'd honestly think about just putting just a pair of Tektro brake levers and calipers on there, because these like sort of no makey type ones, cheap brandy ones, are just let the whole bike down. So yeah, to be absolutely honest, there were nuts and bolts loose all over the bike. The brake caliper mounting bolts were loose, the brake pad bolts were loose themselves. So as soon as I actuated the lever, the whole pad was just spinning from side to side, and it was the same on the rear as well. So obviously when all that's happened on the bike, you're a little bit concerned. So I went over absolutely every nut and bolt and checked the torque on the suspension, on the frame, even the derailleur mounting bolts. I double checked the wheel nuts were tight. As I say, I nipped up the bottom bracket, even the seat post clamp tight, even the rear mud guard was loose. I checked the seat. So I've basically done a full safety check on the bike, and the bike is ready to be ridden. So I think it's flog time and just stick it on. I got it for £5, just a fiver. So that's all it was. So I mentioned in the previous video that the ad went something like this: bike, been stored indoors, not been ridden much, might need a new cable, something like that. Fair enough. I've not put a lot of money into it. If you want to know how much I want for it, I don't know. Well, someone sold one for 50 quid, exactly the same thing. Halfords. It's about £175 bike from Halfords, and I think Halfords are taking the piss a little bit because these brakes are so poor. They're not just going to fail, it's not dangerous in that way, it's just that they're very poor quality and they're difficult to set up. And sometimes they do break, actually, because this whole lever is plastic and it's just tacky. I think for 175 quid you should be getting metal brake levers at least. Okay, fair enough. If you want to keep them calipers, you can keep those calipers because they are metal, but metal brake levers at least. So I saw one go for 50 quid. As I say, I don't want to leave it on a long listing. And that one that went for 50 quid, by the way, that might not have even had a full service and a complete check over like this one has had. Tyres have been pumped up to specified torque, everything. Yeah, so I mean, I'd be more than happy with 40 quid for it, like well happy. I might just throw it in there at 35 quid just to get rid of it dead quick. So yeah, so that's a story. Another one done. Apollo XL, ready for test ride and sale. There we go. Deep clean, hardly anywhere on the freewheel. Shimano rear derailleur, Shimano front derailleur. There won't be anywhere on the crank. A little bit of surface rust. It has been outside here for a few weeks, and it's been raining heavily at the moment, so the surface rust is to be expected. But you know, there's no point getting too deep into that. Apollo seat, nice little Apollo seat. It's the sort of thing that can be left outside. It would make a good cheap Christmas present for someone who maybe just wanted to, you know, use it once or twice. Whole thing's been done. Whole thing. Completely. Suspension working perfectly. Front and rear suspension. So yeah, whole thing's been done. Everything's been checked over. Everything. So if anything else comes loose, I'll be a little bit bemused by what on earth's going on with this bike. Because just because it's cheap, it doesn't mean that bolts can come loose like they were over this bike, like they were all over this bike. That isn't how it works. Cheap bike is just not as good quality, and you end up getting like the odd mechanical failure or wear and tear. Things just don't operate as smoothly as higher end stuff. Typically, that's how it is. But you know, it is what it is. 35 quid. I think it's a good little goer. Something to stick in your back garden and ride occasionally.